In this matter of judging and parenting our children, we saw in our first video from Matthew chapter 7 that when we move toward our children every day as we have to assess their behavior and every day correct them, judge them, and hand out perhaps discipline, we're told that when we do that, we are not to do it from a position, a posture and disposition that we are innocent and our children are the only guilty ones in this matter. No, as we are moving toward our children with a particular matter of judging them, we cannot claim ever to be innocent. There's only one parent who is perfect and innocent, and that's God. And we are not, and therefore we are not to assume that posture as God alone is the only one who can assume that in judging, he can do it from a posture of innocence. We are never innocent, but we do have to judge, and particularly our children, and we need to be reminded that we're not doing that from a posture and disposition of innocence because we are never innocent. That's number one. But Jesus goes on to say something else that's all equally as helpful when it comes to judging, and in particular when it comes to judging our children. So, verse 1 says this by way of review: do not judge, or you too will be judged. For in the same way that you judge others, our children in this case, you will be judged, and with the measure you use, it will be measured to you. Again, we must never move toward our children and address them and judge them as though we are innocent, because we never are. There's only one who can claim that posture and disposition. When we move toward our children, we need to remember first that we're not innocent. They're guilty, and we're guilty too. They're sinful, and we're sinful too. But Jesus goes on to say this. And by the way, if I might add that, he goes on to say, and in this matter of judging, why do you look at the speck of sawdust in your brother's eye and pay no attention to the plank in your own eye? How can you say to your brother, let me take the speck out of your eye, when all the time there's a plank in your own eye? You hypocrite. First take the plank out of your own eye, then you will see clearly to remove the speck from your brother's eye. So he's saying also in this matter of judging, and we're using it in the context of parenting, when you go to judge your children about their faults and their wrongs and their sinful ways of behaving, you have to learn, first of all, to do something before you move toward them to correct them. You have to be very, very certain when you move toward your children to judge them based upon their sins. You have to remember that you're a bigger sinner than they are. If you think they have the log and they're guiltier in this matter of sin than you are, well, then you're going to move toward them harshly and critically and judgmentally, and that's the wrong posture to do that. No, Jesus says, before you move toward your children in this case, for example, or anyone, when you're going to move toward your children and deal with them in their sinfulness, you need to be able to find the plank in your eye as opposed to a speck in their eye. Or in other words, when you move toward your children to judge them and to discipline them and correct them, you need to be certain that you have a log and that you're the bigger sinner in this matter than your children are. This is very important parenting principle. This is a passage about judging, but it has everything to do with parenting because we are judging our children and have to every single day. Let me give you an example of how this played out in my life very quickly here. It happened when my son was about 7 years old, and something happened that was clearly divine, supernatural intervention. I learned a great deal from it, and it was very, very helpful as I raised him and my 3 daughters after him. So, when he was about 7 years old, we were sitting on the couch one day watching a VHS, if you can remember those days, and we were watching a VHS video on David and Goliath. And my son turned to me and said, "Dad, go in my room and get my sword." Now, what happened internally for about 10 to 15 seconds, or 10 seconds, I thought to myself, what? He's telling me what to do? Who is he to tell me what to do? Are you kidding? And he's being lazy. What's wrong with this guy? No, I'm not going to do that. But I stopped. Something stopped me. It wasn't me. God stopped me. and he and what went on in my brain after I got a hold of myself, I thought to myself, maybe he's being lazy. Jeff, Dad, are you lazy? Oh my gosh. Oh my gosh. And then this thought came to me. He's got 7 years of being lazy. I got 35 years of being lazy. Who's got the log here? I've got 35 years of being lazy. He's got 7 years of being lazy. Clearly, I have the log. But 30 seconds before I had that thought, I was ascribing to him of 36 years of being lazy, and I only had 35 years of being lazy. Well, clearly, he's the bigger sinner in this matter. What? That's crazy thinking. That's crazy thinking. He's 7 years old. Maybe he was being lazy. You know what? He really wasn't. But I was ascribing to him to being lazy. He just didn't want to miss the video. He was having such a great time. He was hoping I would go and he wouldn't have to miss the video. But I was ascribing it to laziness. But nonetheless, even worse, I was thinking that he was a far lazier person than I was. But when I began to think properly and accurately, I began to realize that I had the log in my eye, 35 years of laziness. He was only lazy for 7 years. And when I came to that realization, my disposition changed radically. And here's what I said to my son. I said, Jeff, patiently and kindly and gently, I said, Jeff, you know what I'm going to do? Let me pause the video. Why don't you run in your room and go get your sword? Come on back. And when you come back, I'll push play and we'll watch the video. He jumped up, ran into his room, came out with that sword, pretending to be David, I would guess, imagining himself in that situation. And we pushed play and finished out the video. I learned such a valuable lesson from that. I was about to jump down his throat. I was about to be harsh with him. What's wrong with you? I'm not your lackey. I was just going to be rude and mean. But God stopped me. And I looked for a way to find the log in my own eye. And clearly there was a way I could find the log. 35 years, 7 years, I got the log. And having found the log and taken the log out of my own eye and asked forgiveness from God for that, God changed my disposition radically from being harsh to being gentle, to being unkind, to being kind, from being impatient to being patient. And it ended well. And I'm happy to say that was such a valuable lesson for me that I continue to exercise that and practice that, finding the log in my own eye as I was dealing with my son from that point on, and my 3 daughters who were going to be coming up behind him, and a lot of parenting that had to go on with them as well. But these 2 passages, verses 1 and 2 and 3 through 5, have been very, very helpful to help me not to be an abusively angry and verbally abusive parent to my children, thinking that I'm innocent, they're guilty, thinking they got the log, they're a bigger sinner than I am. No, as I've learned how to think accurately in those situations, I've been able to be a much better parent to my son, Jeffrey, and Allie and Jenny and Elizabeth coming up after them. Please consider these things as you go about your own parenting. If this is helpful to you, I'd love to hear about that. If you know of other parents who might benefit from hearing about video number 1 and 2 and 3 here, this is number 3, parenting and judging your children, number 3. Pass these videos along to others and hopefully they'll benefit as well. Thanks for being with me.